Money can't buy love, Mom. I'll choose him. Those were the words that stopped the room cold. 1,000 eyes on us, her, trembling in her silk dress, me, standing there in my wrinkled shirt, holding a ring I could barely afford. Her mother's diamond smile vanished. Then came the laugh, sharp, cruel, echoing through the banquet hall. Choose him. Mrs. Verdon's voice dripped with venom. Darling, he doesn't even own a suit that fits. You were born for billion-dollar men, not that. Everyone laughed with her. Everyone except Lena. She turned, eyes filled with tears, and said it again, louder this time. I choose him. The world went silent. In that silence, I thought I'd won. I thought love had defeated money. But I didn't know she was lying to both of us. That was the night everything began to fall apart. People always say love makes you blind. I used to think that was a cynical thing to say, until I met Lena Verdon. I was 28 then, running a small garage just outside the city. The kind of place where grease sticks to your hands no matter how hard you wash, where every clang of metal feels like another heartbeat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I fixed cars, old trucks, sometimes a few custom builds. I worked late, drank instant coffee, and came home to a one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of engine oil and burnt toast. Then she walked in, heels clicking on the concrete floor, sunlight catching her hair like gold threads. She didn't belong there, not in that world of oil and noise and dust. But she smiled at me anyway. My car's making this weird sound, she'd said, wrinkling her nose. Like a purr that forgot it's supposed to be cute. That's how it started. I didn't know she was a Verdon, the Verdons, one of the richest families in the city. I just saw a woman who laughed too loudly and didn't seem afraid to sit on the hood of her car, even if her dress cost more than my rent. Weeks passed, then months. She started showing up more often, not always for car troubles. Sometimes she brought coffee. Sometimes dinner. Once, she just came to talk, saying she liked the smell of oil and metal. It smelled like real life, she told me. And against all odds, she fell for me. We built our little world in that messy apartment of mine. She'd tease me about my cracked dishes, cook pasta that was always a little underdone, and laugh at my ancient TV that only played static when it rained. There were nights she'd wear one of my shirts and dance barefoot in the kitchen, her laughter bouncing off the peeling walls. We didn't have luxury, but we had something real. I used to wake up before her just to watch her sleep, hair tangled, face soft, no mask of perfection. That's the version of Lena I loved. She'd say things like, I could get used to this, running her fingers over the chipped counter. I never asked what this meant, but I liked to believe it meant us. I was saving up for a ring then. Nothing fancy. Just something simple, real. I kept it in a small velvet box under my bed. Sometimes I'd take it out at night, open it, and imagine her face when I'd finally ask. But then came her mother. Mrs. Verdon. The kind of woman who didn't walk into a room, she arrived. Every word out of her mouth felt like a verdict. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect disdain. The first time she saw me, she didn't even shake my hand. She just looked at my oil-stained fingers and said, so this is the mechanic. Lena tried to defuse the tension, smiling nervously. Mom, please. But Mrs. Verdon cut her off. Do you think love feeds people, Lena? He fixes cars. You belong to a family that builds empires. I said nothing. I wanted to. I wanted to tell her that I didn't need to feed Lena with money, I'd feed her with loyalty, with peace, with everything I had. But in that moment, I realized how small I looked to her. Lena took my hand right there at the dinner table, in front of her mother's icy stare, and said quietly, then maybe I'd rather live in a messy home than a golden cage. I'll never forget the look on her mother's face. It wasn't a shock, it was calculation, the kind you see in someone who doesn't lose battles. After that night, I could feel the distance growing between us, even if Lena didn't admit it. She tried to laugh it off, saying, "She'll come around, she just doesn't understand us." And I wanted to believe that. I really did. But sometimes, late at night, when she'd go quiet and stare at her phone a little too long, I'd feel something cold creep into my chest, a whisper I couldn't silence. Love doesn't scare me, I thought. But losing it does. I held her tighter. Because when you come from nothing, you don't let go of something that feels like everything. There's a moment in every love story when the world starts to tilt, just slightly. You don't feel it at first. The smiles still come, the laughter still echoes. But somewhere, under all that light, a shadow begins to stretch. For me, it started with the invitations. Lena's mother, Mrs. Verdon, suddenly wanted her daughter more involved in the family business. Charity galas. Business luncheons. Private yacht fundraisers where billionaires toasted to causes they barely remembered the next day. Lena said it was just part of her life, something she couldn't ignore forever. "You'll come with me someday," she promised, brushing my hair out of my face. "When she's ready to see how amazing you are." But I never got invited. Instead, I'd see photos online, her in dazzling gowns, beside people whose names I'd only read in the news. There was one picture that stayed in my head longer than I wanted, Lena standing next to a tall man in a suit, his hand a little too familiar on her back, her smile a little too practiced. The caption read, "The Verdon Legacy, Next Generation Leadership." When she came home that night, she was tired, or at least, that's what she said. She kissed me on the cheek, but her perfume smelled like someone else's world. I noticed the changes gradually. The way she dressed, more elegant, more deliberate. The way she spoke, smoother, like every word was being measured. And her phone, she never used to care where she left it. Now, it was always face down. "Who keeps calling this late?" I asked once, half joking. She looked startled. "Just work, babe. Mom keeps dragging me into stuff." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But the truth is, I didn't like who she was when she talked about work. She started canceling our plans. "Mom's hosting something tonight, I can't skip it. Just this weekend, I swear I'll make it up to you." She always said she'd make it up to me. Then one night, I got a call from a friend, Brian, a guy I'd grown up with. He worked as a driver for some of the high-end events downtown. "Hey," he said, voice hesitant. "I saw Lena tonight. Look, man, maybe I'm overthinking it, but she was with her mom and that corporate guy, the one from the papers. They looked close." I laughed it off at first. You know how these people are. Always pretending for cameras. Brian didn't laugh. "Rich families don't lose their daughters without a fight, man. Be careful." His words stuck with me. The next morning, I found Lena sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, smiling faintly. I watched her for a while before saying, "You've been busy lately." She looked up, guilt flashing in her eyes for just a second. "You know how my mom is. She keeps pushing." "Pushing what?" "Her world," she said softly. "But it's not mine." I wanted to believe that. I really did. That same week, something happened that I'll never forget. I came home early from work to find Mrs. Verdon herself standing in my living room. It was surreal, her silk dress brushing against the dusty floor, diamond earrings catching the dim light of my old lamp. She looked around slowly, like she was studying a museum exhibit she didn't quite understand. "This," she said finally, voice like glass, "is where she spends her time." I wiped my hands on a rag, trying to stay calm. "Mrs. Verdon, can I help you with something?" She turned toward me, that cold smile never reaching her eyes. "You can help me by letting her go." I froze. "Excuse me?" "You seem like a decent man," she continued, as if she were doing me a favor. "So let me speak plainly. You can't offer her what she deserves. I can offer her love, I said quietly. She laughed, actually laughed. Love? Love fades. Contracts don't. Something in me snapped. I don't care about your contracts or your billions. I care about her. Then prove it, she said, stepping closer. Prove you love her enough to not drag her down with you. Her perfume filled the air, sharp and suffocating. I didn't answer. I just stood there, jaw tight, fists clenched. She took one last look around the room, her gaze landing on the half-eaten leftovers on the counter, the grease stains on my jeans, the ring box barely hidden beneath a pile of papers on the shelf. Her smile widened. This is what you offer her. Before I could respond, the door opened. Lena walked in. Mom. Sweetheart, Mrs. Verdon said smoothly, we were just having a little chat. Lena looked at me, confused. What's going on? Your mother thinks I should let you go, I said, voice low. Lena's face went pale. Mom, stop. Mrs. Verdon didn't. He deserves someone simple. You deserve someone equal. This isn't love, Lena, it's pity. Lena's eyes welled up. You don't get to decide who I love. For a second, I thought she'd choose me right there, like she had that night at the party. But instead, she turned and ran into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Mrs. Verdon's expression didn't change. You'll thank me someday, she murmured before walking out. When the door closed, silence filled the apartment like smoke. Lena came out minutes later, wiping her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. She doesn't understand us. I didn't say anything. I just pulled her into my arms. But even as I held her, something inside me felt off. Like the warmth between us had a crack in it now, and I could feel the cold seeping through. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified, the ticking clock, the faint hum of traffic outside, her soft breathing beside me. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every word her mother had said. Love fades. Contracts don't. The next day, Lena acted like nothing had happened. She laughed, made pancakes, kissed my cheek before leaving for another family meeting. But when I walked her to the door, I noticed her phone buzzing again. She silenced it without looking. Who's that? I asked. Just Mom. But her eyes told a different story. That evening, she didn't come home until past midnight. I was still awake, pretending to read. She smiled faintly when she saw me, guilt flickering in her gaze. You're still up. I couldn't sleep. She hesitated, then took my hand. No matter what happens, she said quietly, just remember. I chose you. Her words should have comforted me. But instead, they sounded like a goodbye wrapped in a promise. I watched her walk into the bedroom, her silhouette fading into the dark. And for the first time since I met her, I wasn't sure if she was walking toward me, or away from me. There's a specific kind of silence that comes before a heart breaks. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet, almost peaceful. Like the world takes a breath just to listen to you fall apart. For weeks after Mrs. Verdon's visit, Lena kept saying things were fine. She'd leave in the mornings with a kiss on my cheek, perfume lingering in the air, and come back at night looking different. Polished. Distant. Just business stuff, she'd say, when I asked. Mom wants me to sit in on meetings. I tried to trust her. I really did. But the Lena I knew, the girl who used to laugh at my broken coffee maker, who'd sit cross-legged on the counter eating cereal at midnight, she was fading. One night, I found her in the living room, still dressed from another one of her mother's events. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message flashed, just a name, Darian. I didn't recognize it. She snatched the phone before I could read the rest. Work stuff, she muttered, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Work with who? Mom's business partners. Then why are they texting you at midnight? She exhaled sharply, irritated. Can we not do this right now? Her tone hit harder than it should have. Cold. Detached. The kind of tone you use when you're already halfway out the door. I dropped it that night. But something inside me didn't. A week later, I was in the garage when my phone buzzed, Brian again. His voice was shaky. Man, you need to see this. He sent me a link. It was a gossip headline. Verdun Empire secures billion-dollar alliance, exclusive engagement announced. My stomach twisted. I clicked it. The photo loaded slowly, like the universe wanted to drag out the pain. There she was. Lena. My Lena. Wearing a silver gown, smiling beneath chandeliers that cost more than my entire garage. And beside her, that same man from the earlier photos. Darien Vale. Billionaire heir. Perfect jawline. Perfect suit. Perfect life. Her hand rested on his chest. His arm wrapped around her waist. And on her finger, a ring. Bigger than her mother's pride. The caption read. The engagement of Lena Verdun and Darien Vale marks a new chapter for the Verdun legacy. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled, the phone slipping from my grip and shattering on the concrete floor. I sank onto the cold ground, staring at nothing. Everything we'd built, the laughter, the promises, the nights spent planning a future, gone. And then I heard my own voice in my head. She said she chose me. I went to her mansion that night. I didn't care how I looked, grease on my hands, shirt half-buttoned, eyes burning. The guards at the gate recognized me, one of them hesitated but eventually let me through. The house looked unreal. Marble, gold, perfection. Every corner screamed money, and lied. Lena was standing in the grand hall, dressed in something expensive, her hair tied back like she was someone else entirely. When she saw me, she froze. Why? I asked. Just that one word. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Why didn't you tell me? I stepped closer. You told me you chose me. She flinched, looking away. I did. Did what? Lie to me? Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. Mom said the engagement was temporary, just for business. I thought I could fix it, that I could have both. Both? I repeated, my voice trembling. My heart and her world. She hesitated, whispering, I just wanted time. Then you never chose at all. Her mother's voice cut through the air like a knife. Bravo. Finally, you see it for what it is. Mrs. Verdun descended the staircase, wrapped in elegance and poison. Her smirk was everything I'd imagined, victorious. You see, Mr. Cole, she said smoothly, Lena's heart may be foolish, but even she can't ignore reality forever. You were in a phase. I clenched my fists. You made her lie. I made her choose. Lena turned to her mother, voice breaking. Mom, please. But Mrs. Verdun silenced her with a glance. Then she looked at me and smiled coldly. You've always been useful to me, she said. A lesson. I frowned. A lesson? Yes, she said softly. A lesson in poverty. Why is love without power just desperation? Lena's tears finally fell. Stop it, she cried. But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I couldn't. The girl standing in front of me wasn't the one I'd fallen for. Mrs. Verdun leaned closer, voice low enough for only me to hear. You should thank me. I'm saving you from a lifetime of humiliation. She turned to her daughter. Show him out. Lena shook her head, whispering, I'm sorry. But her mother's glare froze her in place. I laughed then, quietly, bitterly. Don't bother, I said, stepping back. You already showed me the door. As I turned to leave, cameras flashed outside, reporters waiting for a statement, hungry for scandal. Somehow, the story had already leaked. By morning, I was everywhere. The Mechanic and the Heiress, a love story that never stood a chance. The fool who thought love beats billions. My business line was flooded, not with customers, but with mockery. Online trolls called me the charity boyfriend. Someone even edited a photo of me next to Lena's engagement picture, captioning it, "From oil stains to heartbreak." Within a week, my garage was gone. Mrs. Verdon had friends in the right places, property owners, permit offices, inspectors. Suddenly, my lease was under review, my accounts flagged for irregularities. In a month, I lost everything. People avoided me. The same ones who once cheered for our fairy tale love now whispered that I should have known better. That I'd reached too high. And maybe they were right. I stopped answering calls. Stopped leaving my apartment. The walls felt smaller every day, the air heavier. The ring I'd once saved for Lena sat on my desk, glinting mockingly under the light. I replayed her words over and over in my head. Money can't buy love, Mom. I'll choose him. Maybe she believed that once. Maybe she still wanted to. But somewhere along the way, she'd chosen convenience over conviction. Comfort over truth. One night, I sat on the floor of my dark apartment, surrounded by the ruins of what I'd built. And I realized something. They didn't just take my love. They took my name. My pride. My future. And in that realization, something inside me shifted. The heartbreak hardened. The silence became sharper. They stole my love, I whispered to no one. Then, after a long pause, the words came out colder. But I'll take something far more precious from them in return. When people lose everything, they usually break. I didn't. I disappeared. After the scandal, after the humiliation, after the whispers and the headlines, I left the city without saying a word. Let them think I'd run away, that I'd given up. It was easier that way. They could bury me in their laughter, I was already planning to rise from the ashes they built. Rumors spread fast. Some said I'd fled overseas. Some said I was broke, drinking my nights away. A few said I'd joined some underground mechanic ring, whatever that meant. The truth? I was rebuilding. I found work at a small tech firm 2 cities over, a place that fixed hardware, developed systems, and needed someone who didn't mind starting from the bottom. I was good with machines, always had been. But more than that, I had patience. I could study something until I understood it inside out, cars, engines, people, empires. And I was done fixing cars. Now, I was going to fix my life. I worked quietly, learned fast, and stayed up late. I didn't talk much, but I listened, to gossip, to business chatter, to the markets. The world of tech and finance wasn't that different from the world under a car hood. They both ran on pressure, on timing, on knowing which part to pull if you wanted the whole thing to collapse. By the end of the first year, I was a project lead. People noticed me, not my name, but my results. And I liked it that way. But I never forgot them. Every time I saw Lena's face in the news, smiling at charity events, talking about authenticity and staying true to one's roots, something twisted inside me. She'd become a brand. The poor girl made good narrative. The world ate it up. And every time I saw her mother standing beside her, untouched by scandal, still holding court over her billion-dollar empire, I reminded myself why I couldn't stop. Mrs. Verdon had made me a ghost. Now I was going to haunt her. It started small. Late nights with a burner laptop, tracing public records, stock portfolios, board memberships. Verdon Holdings was massive, but stretched thin. Too thin. Over-leveraged across industries, dependent on foreign investors who didn't like bad press. Then there was Darian Vale, the golden fiancé. His company, Vale Enterprises, was a glittering front hiding rot. False audits. Inflated earnings. Bribes disguised as consulting fees. The deeper I dug, the clearer it became, these people built their world on deception. And all it would take was a single spark to bring it down. So I became the spark. I started using aliases. At night, I was Evan Cross, freelance analyst, quiet investor, invisible threat. I built networks, gathered information, made friends in low and high places. It's amazing how easy it is to open doors when no one knows you're the one who used to knock from the outside. That's when I met Clara Hensley. A journalist. Sharp as glass. A voice that cuts through lies like a blade. We met at a late-night cafe where the espresso was bad but the conversations were good. "I know who you are," she said the first time we met. I froze. She smiled. "Relax. I'm not here to ruin you. I'm here because I hate her." "Mrs. Verdon?" She nodded. Verdon's media arm blacklisted me years ago for exposing their labor scandals. I've been waiting for payback. You've been digging for months. I want in. I studied her for a moment. Her eyes weren't lying. They had the same quiet fury mine did. And just like that, I had an ally. Together, we started piecing the puzzle. Clara had contacts. I had access. She'd dig through press archives, and I'd cross-check with financial leaks, tracing every thread until the Verdun Empire started to look less like a fortress and more like a web waiting to snap. One night, I found the ring again. It was still in its box, tucked inside an old duffel bag I hadn't touched since the garage closed. I don't even remember opening it, just staring at it for a long time, the metal catching the dim light of my apartment. It wasn't for her anymore. It was for closure. I kept it on my desk, next to the laptop. A reminder of what I'd lost, and what I was about to take back. Months passed. My plan grew sharper. Cleaner. Each move was deliberate. First, I targeted the fiancé. Darian Vale. Through an anonymous tip, Clara leaked whispers of accounting irregularities to a rival media house. The story didn't catch right away, but it planted doubt. Investors started asking questions. Next, I traced Mrs. Verdon's offshore holdings, shell companies, hidden trusts, quiet transfers. The numbers didn't add up. Her empire wasn't thriving. It was barely breathing. One scandal could kill it. And Lena, she was the soft spot. Her entire image relied on being the humble heiress, the girl who loved simple things. Every interview, every post, every public smile was built around me, the poor mechanic she chose once upon a time. She'd used me as her origin story. Her redemption arc. I watched one of her interviews late one night, half out of curiosity, half out of masochism. She was sitting under bright lights, laughing softly. The interviewer asked about her past. "Was it true," he asked, "that you were once in love with someone, less fortunate?" She smiled, practiced, effortless. "Oh, I wouldn't call it love," she said. "It was an experience. A phase. I think we all have to fall for the wrong person before we realize our worth." The audience laughed. She laughed with them. And I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling something inside me break all over again, but differently this time. Not with sadness. With clarity. I turned off the TV, opened my laptop, and started typing. Doubt had been my greatest weakness. That night, it became my weapon. I built the plan like an engineer, precise, layered, unforgiving. Step 1, expose Darian Vale's fraud publicly, not quietly. A data leak, timed perfectly during one of his major investment rounds. Step 2, tie Verdun Holdings to those same fraudulent accounts. Create a chain reaction. Step 3, when the empire began to fall, let Lena's brand crumble with it. I wouldn't touch them physically. I didn't need to. I'd take the one thing they valued more than money, reputation. But revenge has a strange way of talking to you. It whispers questions in the dark. Are you still the same person she loved? Or have you become what her mother always said you were, a man who can't let go? There were nights I almost stopped. I'd close the laptop, stare at the ring, and wonder if maybe disappearing forever would have been easier. But then I'd remember the look on Mrs. Verdun's face when she said it, a lesson in poverty. And the fire came back. Clara was the only one who knew everything. You're playing a dangerous game, she warned one night, tapping her pen against her notebook. Once this starts, there's no undoing it. I nodded. I know. Then why do it? I thought about it for a long time before answering. Because they took everything I had. And I want them to know what that feels like. She studied me for a moment, then said quietly, just make sure you still recognize yourself when it's over. By the end of that year, everything was in place. Clara's articles were scheduled. My data packets were ready to drop. The timing was surgical, each leak would hit like a domino, one after another, collapsing the Verdun name from the inside out. It wouldn't happen overnight. It would unravel slowly, publicly, painfully, in front of every camera, every investor, every loyal follower who once believed in their perfection. The stage was set. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to peace. Not joy. Not satisfied. Just stillness. I looked at the ring one last time, rolling it between my fingers. It used to represent love. Then it became painful. Now, it has a purpose. This isn't for her, I whispered. It's for me. Because sometimes, closure doesn't come from forgiveness. Sometimes, it comes from watching the people who broke you finally break themselves. I never wanted fireworks. I wanted a precise, surgical cut. But the night needed to look like an accident, like fate finally catching up. The plan had a countdown. Clara had the bylines cued. I had the packet. Months of digging, of stitching tiny lies into one big truth, sat on a single drive in my lap. I remember thinking, as I pressed the final key, that my hands didn't shake. The shaking came later. It started with a ping. Not the dramatic kind in movies. Just the soft alert of a headline landing in 10 million pockets at once. A coordinated drop, Clara's investigative piece hit the front page of the biggest financial outlet in the country. Simultaneously, encrypted files were handed to the securities regulator, and to a consortium of journalists waiting for proof. The files were clean. The lines are irrefutable. Darien Vale's accounts. Shell transfers. Phantom revenues. Payments routed through companies tied to Verdun Holdings. Contracts that existed only on paper. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Notifications, calls, messages, a storm in a glass jar. It was the night of Lena's wedding. They set the hall like a cathedral for money. Crystal chandeliers. A stage wrapped in white roses. Cameras on cranes. Guests in tuxedos showed their patent leather shoes like armor. I had imagined 1,000 possible scenes for the endgame, a phone call at home, a quiet resignation, a press release at dawn, but nothing felt as poetic as this, truth arriving in the middle of their celebration, at the moment they were most exposed. The first ripple hit when someone in the front row pulled out a phone. A headline scrolled across. Murmurs. Then the soft exhale of disbelief. The maitre d' looked stunned. A woman near the aisle gasped. The music stuttered and then stopped. Phone screens lifted like a field of tiny, accusing suns. Is that, a guest whispered. No. That can't be. The screens showed graphs. Emails. A ledger. A name repeated in different columns until the repetition became a confession. The ticker on the screen at the reception's edge, Verdun Holdings, started to flash red as real-time trades plummeted. People looked at their portfolios like they'd been handed poison. Darian's face changed first. Not shock, the kind of practiced calm men like him own evaporated. He fumbled at his cufflinks, then at his phone, then at his smile. He walked toward the exit like a man trying to outrun his shadow. His family clustered, whispering. I watched him go. I expected fury. Instead, there was panic, quick, mechanical, contagious. Mrs. Verdun didn't move right away. She stood at the head table like a statue carved from ice. Then she blinked. The tiny cracks showed. She rose slowly, more royal than real, and reached for the microphone as if she could stitch together the night with words. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, voice steady, but thinner. Some unsubstantiated. Phones ignored her. The room had turned into a courtroom. People streamed to their social feeds. Live videos began. Reporters outside the bridal hall already had their feeds running, and within minutes the wedding was trending under a headline no PR firm could rewrite, Verdun Holdings under investigation, sources, financial misconduct, ties to Vale Enterprises. The crash was a sound. Not audible, but visible, the numbers evaporating from screens, the hurried tapping at phones, investors calling lawyers. Someone shouted. A champagne bottle toppled. A child began to cry. The band packed up mid-set, stagehands moving like ghosts. I didn't stand on the periphery. I walked in. It was slow at first. A step, then another. People moved aside, not trusting the man in a thrift store suit and oil-stained hands to be anything but a trespasser. I passed clusters of guests whose makeup had begun to run, into tears or into sweat, I couldn't tell which. I passed servers frozen like witnesses. A florist dropped a bouquet, white petals scattering like ash. And then I saw her. Lena had collapsed into one of the velvet chairs. Her wedding dress, an impossible architecture of lace, looked wrong on her shoulders, like a stolen costume. Her mascara ran. Her lips were pale. She stared at her phone like someone reading the verdict on a judge's gavel. Our eyes met. She looked at me like you look at an old scar. Not with hatred. Not with love. With the strange blankness of someone who had watched two separate endings collide. Why are you here? She mouthed. Silent in the hurricane of noise. Her voice, when it came, was a thread. Stop this. Please. I smiled. It felt like teeth on ice. You set this stage, I said, and my voice cut through the din, I just turned on the lights. Then she began to plead, the way people plead when their scripts fail. I thought I could fix everything. You already did, I said. You fixed me. The words landed like a verdict. Around us, servers were unplugged. Security men were attempting to herd guests toward exits. Cameras swiveled. Someone yelled for a lawyer. The band started playing dissonant jazz to cover the noise. Mrs. Verdun's posture finally broke. She sat. Her hands trembled. For the first time I saw the woman behind the mask, a tired face that had used other people's lives like chess pieces. She mouthed something to a niece and then to no one. Who did this? Darian demanded as he returned, fury slick and useless. Who leaked this? That was the moment the rumor mill turned to fact. The anchor channels were circling, their feeds flaring red. Regulators tweeted. The stock exchange posted a temporary halt. Darian's phone exploded with calls from hostile board members. He shoved his mother away and stalked into a private hall with 2 aides. It was all happening too fast for damage control to matter. When security finally noticed me moving into the aisle, they intercepted me. A bulky man, pressed suit and shiny shoes, grabbed my arm. Sir, I can't, he began. I looked at him. Up close, you see the fear. It's a small, ugly thing. Let me through, I said. I need to see her. He hesitated. Then he let go. Maybe it was the way I said it to her. Maybe it was the ring. Maybe it was that the room had already surrendered. I stood in front of Lena. Lights flashed like confession. Cameras caught my profile the way old movies catch a desperate man, expression raw, hands empty. The bride stared up. Her lips trembled. You brought me into a life I couldn't keep, she whispered. Please. You let me think I was enough, I said. The memory of our small apartment flashed behind my eyes, burnt toast, cracked plates, the sound of her laughing in my kitchen. You made me believe that'd be enough. She reached for me. Her fingers were cold. Forgive me. Please. We can. No, I said. Short. Absolute. Final. Mrs. Verdon had been escorted to a private room by then. Her face was white, the contour of the jaw slack with shock. She wasn't a villain anymore in the black and white way gossip paints villains. She was a woman being stripped of all the rituals that once made her untouchable: status, money, distance. I saw a flicker of something like fear. It was satisfying in a way I didn't expect. Around us, chaos found its rhythm. A small group of investors left immediately, their heels clacking like gavels. Social feeds lit up with accusations. Live comments demanded justice. Reporters outside shouted into cameras, their faces hungry for the collapse. And then the twist I had designed, elegant and surgical, began to reveal itself publicly. Clara's follow-up pieces started to drop, each one a bullet of evidence that tied the Vail accounts to Verdon Holdings. The regulator released a statement. Banks froze accounts. A major partner announced they were reviewing all ties to Verdon companies. Darian's family, sensing a contagion, publicly distanced themselves. Within hours, his engagement announcement turned into an obituary for ambitions. Security tried to block the press, but in the age of phones, walls are paper. The world watched a dynasty stumble live. The wedding was not saved. It was a mausoleum. Lena reached for me again, and this time her voice cut through everything. Don't leave like this. Please. I'm leaving, I said. Because when you chose a life built on glass, you forgot how easily it shatters. She whispered one last thing, softer than the music, and it landed like a stone dropped in a pond. I didn't mean. You meant enough to hurt me, I replied. That's enough. I turned and walked away. Outside, sirens were beginning to wail. Cameras flashed like a storm. The parking lot filled with cars and hashtags and lawyers. I climbed into a taxi without looking back. The driver asked if I wanted the radio on, I said no. Silence fits better. As the car pulled away, I watched the hall through a rear window. People were shouting. Mrs. Verdon's aide stumbled out, face pale, clutching a folder. Lena stood at the doorway, small and disoriented in the flow of strangers. For the first time in a long time I felt nothing and everything at once, the sweetness of victory laced with a residue of loss I could not fully wash away. The city blurred. I held the ring in my pocket and felt its cold weight. Behind me, the dynasty I dismantled tried desperately to reassemble itself in a world that didn't believe in miracles for empires built on lies. They had everything once. Money. Power. Names whispered like spells. Now they had headlines. Now they had emptiness. Now they would learn what it meant to be watched as you fall. I didn't celebrate. I simply let the car take me down a different street. The night smelled like wet gravel and something else, freedom, maybe, or the smoke that follows burned bridges. I didn't care which. I only knew that whatever came next belonged to me. When the taxi turned a corner and the lights of the wedding vanished behind a line of buildings and sirens, I pulled the ring from my pocket and slipped it into the small trash bag on the floor. No ceremonious toss. No triumphal flair. Just the soft sound of metal folding into waste. The city swallowed the scene, and I exhaled like a man who'd finally been permitted to breathe again. It was raining again. The kind of soft, persistent rain that made the streets look clean, even if they weren't. The city had gone back to its rhythm, cars, lights, strangers brushing past each other like ghosts. Months had passed since the wedding that never finished, since the empire that never recovered. I'd vanished again, only this time it wasn't running. It was resting. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a tailor's shop. I liked it because no one recognized me there. No cameras. No whispers. Just the hum of espresso machines and the smell of burnt sugar. The newspaper on the counter carried the headline in bold black letters. Verdun Holdings declares bankruptcy, assets frozen amid ongoing investigations. Below it, a smaller line. Former heiress Lena Verdun seen leaving country, no comment given. I stared at her name for a long time. Not with anger. Not even satisfaction. Just, understanding. The kind that comes when the story finally stops hurting. The truth had done what I couldn't. It stripped them bare. Quietly. Without fanfare. The waiter placed a cup of black coffee in front of me. "Refill?" he asked. I nodded. "Please." He smiled, the kind of small smile people give when they don't know they're saving you a little. As he walked away, I reached into my jacket pocket. The ring was still there, the same one I'd bought years ago, when love had been simple, before it became currency. The metal had dulled, scratched and faded, but it still caught light when I turned it. I held it between my fingers, studying it like an old photograph. So much weight in something so small. Then I looked at the paper again. The photos of chaos. Of boardrooms emptied. Of Mrs. Verdun hiding behind lawyers. And Lena, dressed in black, stepping into a car, face hidden. I took a slow sip of coffee, then whispered under my breath, more to myself than to anyone else. She wanted $1 billion life, but all I ever gave her was the truth. The ring felt lighter after that. I set it on a napkin, watched it gleam under the dim cafe light, then let it fall softly into the trash beside me. No sound. No ceremony. Just the quiet end of something that once mattered too much. Outside, the rain had turned into mist. People moved through it like shadows. I left the cafe, pulling my jacket close, walking without hurry. The city didn't look the same anymore, but maybe that was the point. I wasn't the same either. They had their billions once. Now, I had my peace. And as I passed a glowing billboard flashing another headline about the empire's final collapse, I couldn't help but smile, faint, almost invisible. "Funny thing about truth," I murmured, watching the lights blur in the rain. "Once you lose it, even $1 billion can't buy it back."